There are more than 70 brawlers in the game right now, and out of these, there's one brawler which has always remained the highest skill cap brawler and the hardest brawler to master in terms of gameplay mechanics, and that is the creature of the night himself, Mortis. As one of the original brawlers released in the game on June 14, 2017, this brawler remains one of the most highest skill cap brawlers we've ever seen in the game, and there's only a select amount of people who have actually mastered the brawler and can actually dominate any game with Mortis. And that is why it's so difficult for those random players to actually control Mortis, which is why getting random Mortises on your team is always going to be a nightmare unless they play the game very well. But what exactly makes Mortis such a high skill cap brawler? Well, let's take a deep dive into exactly that. Number 1. Melee Playstyle. Mortis is a melee brawler, which means that he actually has to come up and close with enemies to deal damage to them. This can be challenging as it puts Mortis in a lot of trouble in terms of getting damage from the enemy brawlers. And that is why mastering Mortis takes excellent decision making, positioning and timing to avoid getting overwhelmed by enemies. Number 2. Countering tanks. While Mortis thrives against low health brawlers with low amount of damage, he actually struggles against tanky brawlers like Primo and Frank, for example, who has quite a bit of health and who can also deal a lot of damage up and close. So if you ever come up against tanky brawlers and if you're playing a Mortis, just make sure you know when to retreat, when to attack, and be smart with who you target depending on the time of the match and the health of the brawler as well. Number 3. Team coordination. Now, since Mortis doesn't have a lot of health on his side, he actually relies and requires healing from his teammates. So actually team coordination is a very big role when you're playing Mortis in any game mode, especially game modes like Heist and Gem Grab. And I think we all know how difficult it is to get good teammates when you're playing with randoms, right? And that makes playing Mortis extremely difficult, especially with random matchmaking. Now the next and final point of why Mortis is so difficult to master is countering range. Mortis is actually a close range brawler, as you guys know, right? He deals damage up and close, obviously with the exception of his super, but otherwise he has to come up close to the brawlers to deal damage to them. And this makes him a very big target for long range brawlers like Colt and Colette, who can actually shoot at him from very far away. And these days, with more and more long range brawlers being released in the game, it's becoming even more difficult for Mortis to survive in the current meta. Only the best Mortis players can actually be able to counter these long range brawlers by understanding brawler angles, how to dash around the shots and nuking shots very well, so they can actually deal the damage up close when they get to the brawlers. And that is the most difficult part of playing Mortis. One more bonus point I want to mention about Mortis which makes him so difficult is actually his super. Now, unlike most brawlers in the game, Mortis' super actually requires a lot of control and a lot of direction to actually be effective. So you can't just get away with auto-aiming your super, you have to manually aim it and make sure you're angling it correctly. And doing that will ensure you won't waste your super, as well as you'll be able to get multiple brawlers at once. After listing out all the ways in which Mortis is so difficult to play in the game, I think it comes as no surprise that Mortis is such a difficult brawler to master. But one thing's for sure, if you're able to really master Mortis, he can be an absolutely devastating brawler to play against. Just ask RZM. I hope you enjoyed this one. Now subscribe or you'll be getting random Mortises every single game.